After weeks of fire and fury, the United States and Iran agree to a fragile ceasefire. But is this peace or just a pause before the storm?
After flirting with an historic high of $177 a barrel, global oil prices plummeted to under 100 following a newly announced 2-week U.S.-Iran ceasefire. But the starting terms are heavily weighted, including a U.S. withdrawal, full compensation for Iran, and the lifting of sanctions. Both sides are spinning this outcome as a total win. In Washington, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declared a capital V victory, claiming Iran bowed to overwhelming pressure. Over in Tehran, state television told citizens that the U.S. suffered an undeniable, historic, and crushing defeat. The paperwork says one thing, but the sky above the Middle East says another. Within hours of the ceasefire announcement, the air was crackling with missile barges. Strikes were reported across the Gulf, and Israel launched a massive attack on Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon. You have heavily mismatched concessions, competing declarations of absolute victory, and active bombardments happening right now. This is a precarious, highly volatile pause in hostilities. The ink on the agreement hasn't translated to the realities of a functional peace. This diagram illustrates the core deadlock preventing peace. The U.S. demands the Strait of Hormuz remain open for the 2-week truce. Iran will open the strait only if Allied strikes stop. Neither side will blink first. Washington and Tehran aren't actually talking to each other directly to resolve this. The combatants are entirely reliant on a network of shadow mediators passing messages back and forth. China has reportedly stepped in to pressure Iran to come to the table. Meanwhile, Pakistan's prime minister has been acting as a direct intermediary between U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Iranian officials, trying to broker a physical meeting right here in Islamabad. The timeline to get everyone in the same room is incredibly tight. Pakistan has proposed face-to-face negotiations to take place by this coming Friday. The U.S. and Iran aren't driving their own diplomatic process. Any chance this truce has of holding relies entirely on the leverage exerted by China and the rapid scheduling logistics managed by Pakistan. There is a massive operational loophole in the agreement. Israel publicly supports the ceasefire with Iran, but explicitly states it does not apply to their fight against Iranian proxies, carrying out heavy strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon. If Iran's military decides those strikes constitute a breach of the deal, they could easily resume firing their own missiles. The entire conflict could reignite in a matter of hours. Compounding the tension abroad is the rhetoric coming from the top at home. Before the deadline, the president threatened to wipe out an entire civilization if Iran didn't agree to the terms, specifically mentioning targets that would destroy Iran's power supply and economy. That maximalist language puts U.S. service members in a legally perilous position. As former CIA officer Elliot Ackerman points out, deliberately targeting civilians and wiping out civilizations constitutes a war crime. Anyone wearing the uniform is obligated to disobey an illegal order. What sounds like aggressive negotiating tactics on television translates to deep operational confusion on the ground. Troops need clear, legal objectives. When the rhetoric gets this extreme, it strips away the clarity required to actually execute a mission. That disconnect between the podium and the front lines is fueling domestic blowback in the U.S. Congressional Democrats are demanding the president be removed from office, arguing his handling of the crisis has left the U.S. in a far worse position than before the war began. The political fracture is deep enough that even once staunch Republican allies, like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, have publicly suggested the president should be removed. Across the globe, Iranian citizens are facing their own grim reality. In January, many risked their lives and were killed, flooding the streets to protest a government they despise, hoping international pressure might finally force a change in regime. Instead, many Iranians now fear this diplomatic pause will do the exact opposite. By forcing the U.S. to the negotiating table and extracting major concessions, the regime can frame itself as victorious, using that leverage to strengthen its authoritarian grip at home. This leaves exactly 2 weeks to resolve a maze of deadlocks. The 14-day clock is a desperate sprint to take aggressive rhetoric, unverified concessions, and shadow negotiations and hammer them into a survivable reality before the entire region goes up in flames.